And so I think for all of us B2B marketers, the floor is shifting underneath us. The market's been weird. All of the tactics that we've been used to using, they're just not working the same way. And we really need some new ideas for how to go to market. And you might not rush to think about out of home, but hopefully after today's presentation, we'll be able to convince you that it's something you can tackle and that you should tackle, and that it's a great way for B2B marketers to do something a little bit different and capture demand while growing the brand. And my name is Amber. I'm a fractional CMO with OneScreen right now. And I have been a B2B SaaS marketer for my entire career, working in startups across the different stages of growth from stealth all the way up to pre-IPO, and have had the chance to see just the different sides of that journey. My experience with out of home before starting to work with OneScreen was pretty limited. I had done a couple of fundraising announcements with the big old NASDAQ screen and attempted one billboard at an event, but hopefully we'll be able to immerse you in much more of the out of home world today. Greg, you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Nick, thanks so much for having us. Really, really looking forward to digging in here. And I'm one of the co-founders here, also Chief Customer Officer. The story is really interesting in terms of why we're here and doing what we're doing. Never thought in a million years I'd be selling things like billboards, but here we are. Was a former early stage HubSpot guy myself. So are my two co-founders. So for about 7-8 years, really kind of sold against things like billboards. But the three of us got together in early 2020 and we realized there was a shift happening in a lot of the digital marketing that we had all been used to as performance-oriented marketers. And we looked at out of home and learned very quickly, it's the only traditional channel that was still growing, but growing slowly. We also realized there was a lot of, call it white space or a blue ocean, if you will, of opportunity. There weren't a lot of people innovating. And that all kind of lined up to potentially disrupting it, for a lack of better terminology and buzzwords. But that's why we're doing what we're doing, helping marketers who over the past 10 years have been used to the digital marketing, very scientific and analytical, performance-oriented tactics that are now sort of feeling some pain, and introducing them to one of the solutions that they can use to scale their customer acquisition efforts and include in their marketing mix. But we needed to provide data and make it much easier to measure. And that's why we're here.
Love that. Funny enough, I didn't know you came from HubSpot. I see Mark on. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Did you guys overlap at all at HubSpot?
Yeah. So I was there, let's see, early or 2010 through the middle of 2017.
Oh, wow. Okay. Nice.
14 years ago now, Greg.
Yeah, well, let's just call attention to that headshot. I like to think I looked very much the same, but that was actually when I was at HubSpot. I think that was when I was 26, and I'm not 26 anymore. But let's pretend I still look like that.
You do.
Everyone, thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, again, if anyone's listening has questions, drop them in the chat. I will tell you where to find Amber and Greg after. But I'm excited to dive in, so
let's go.
Let's go.
All right, cool. So today we're going to talk about some misconceptions with out of home. These really, quite frankly, come quite personally from me, the misconceptions that I held. We'll do a little bit of myth busting on those. And then Greg's going to show some campaign examples, some real out of home campaigns that B2B companies you will recognize the names of have run and what results they've been able to achieve. And we've picked a variety of different kinds of campaigns just so that you can really see how flexible the application for out of home can be for B2B marketers. And then quickly we'll show, because this is all about data, and this is what's going to blow your mind, is how much data goes into putting together these out of home campaigns. And so Greg's going to show us a little bit about how OneScreen does that. And then we'll end with talking about how you can get started. So because this is such a new kind of medium for B2B marketers, I want to share what the process looks like and how you can get your internal stakeholders kind of along for the ride. So my story, my personal story, I'm a fractional CMO now. I've been doing fractional work for just shy of a year, which is crazy. It's gone very fast. But prior to this, I was the VP of marketing at ThoroughPass. And like many of us at that time, we were in the compliance space, a hugely competitive market. A lot of what was driving our growth in our business was paid advertising and paid search, but our competitors were driving up the cost of performing in those channels. They had big budgets and they were very competitive with what they would bid. And so some of those performance channels were getting less and less efficient. They were costing us more. They were a little bit less predictable. And so, we really started to look for other ways to grow, to continue to grow. And it's not that we didn't try other performance channels. Surely we did a lot of paid newsletters, but like many of us know, one insertion with one of the big ones could cost you 10 to 15K. And if it doesn't perform very well, that's a lot of money in one shot to kind of have go out the window. So around this time, we were also going through a rebrand. So ThoroughPass used to be called Leica. And that was a very intentional kind of lean into our differentiation, building that story, and quite frankly, building our brand. And so, sort of organically, as going through that process, we also started to talk at the C-level about how we would start to increase brand-based investments. But I, quite frankly, was struggling. We were such a performance-oriented business that I was struggling to figure out how to put brand investment dollars into the budget in a way that made sense to the CFO and to the rest of the C-level team. And in one of those conversations, we did talk about billboards. And it wasn't that I was opposed to billboards, but what I literally said to them was, great, let's do a brand-based campaign with billboards, but you're going to need to give me $250,000 to $500,000. I'm going to need 6 months to run this. And you can't expect me to be able to show you any kind of ROI. And I'm not really sure what kind of measurement I'd actually be able to give you. Like that was literally the pitch that I gave to the C-level team. Do you guys want to guess if they went for it or not? Yeah, they didn't go for it then. Well, a little foreshadowing there. They didn't go for
Teaser.
it then. And I wouldn't suggest that anybody pitch an out-of-home pilot that way either. It will not work. But really, like that is because I thought out-of-home will cost us a ton, right? Like this isn't the kind of channel where you can just put $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in, see how it works and adjust from there. Like this is a big bet we have to place, and we have to do it kind of on a large scale. I also thought this is going to have to run for months. First, it'll take us a long time to plan, but then we're going to need these in market for 4 to 6 months at least to be able to get the kind of data that will give us the confidence we would want to say, hey, this actually did work. We should do it again. And then, it's like a mass media channel. So I can think about the geographies where I might be more likely, or the markets where I might be more likely to find like tech workers and marketers or whatever, Salt Lake City, New York, those like Palo Alto, like obvious kind of markets, but there's a lot of waste and there's not really a great way for me to pinpoint or to feel with confidence that I'm going to reach the people I want to reach, like I can in other channels where I can pick their titles, I can pick their companies. We've got so much at our disposal in digital to try to narrow in on who we want to get in front of, and kind of tie that all together. It was really also because I thought the only way I could measure out of home was to think about it in terms of reach and eyeballs. And so literally what I figured I would do is if we piloted this out of home campaign, I'd probably pick two markets. And then I'd use Google Analytics. While we ran this campaign for 6 months, I'd use Google Analytics to kind of observe and watch what was going on in those 2 market areas to see, like, will my branded search increase? Will my organic or direct traffic increase? Can I show a little bit of a lift in those markets compared to other markets where I'm not running out of home? That was it. And again, in order to be able to get to a place where I felt I'd have any sort of statistically significant lift data, I felt we would have to spend a lot and do it for a long time. And good news is I have learned that is not all true. But I think the other piece here, kind of underscoring a little bit of all of this, is I thought that out of home was only really static billboards. I thought that anything digital needed to be purchased programmatically and also, kind of at scale. I had no idea that you can put billboards on boats, planes. This also includes like what we call our brand ambassadors, or like the sign spinners that stand outside of the Moscone. like any number of things, digital LED trucks, wrapped cars. Like I just had no idea that there was such a variety that could be included in out of home. And that because of that variety, those are the sort of pieces you can put together to create a far more cost-effective out-of-home campaign, but also to think about how you tackle reach and frequency, again, like we think about with some of our digital advertising channels, to really achieve the right outcomes, right? And to get people to take action in a shorter period of time versus, them just kind of having that nascent brand awareness kind of thing. And so this was really the background that I kind of went into learning about out of home with. And somebody in my network introduced me to OneScreen. It was when I was starting to do some of this research at ThoroughPass when I was still there in-house. And what I learned kind of blew my mind, which was that there was just so much more to out of home than I knew. And that OneScreen in particular was really bringing the sort of tactics and technology to out of home campaign planning that mirrored what I would do in my digital or demand gen or revenue oriented campaigns. And so slowly but surely, I really, kind of submerged myself in this world. And before I even joined OneScreen as their fractional CMO, like really just started wanting to tell other B2B marketers that they should check this out. And this was something that they should know about. So I'll pause here for a second and maybe Mark or Nick, like, does this line up with what you guys would have thought about out of home? Any other misconceptions maybe that you would throw in here?
Well, I was gonna say, so I used to work for Motorola back in the day, and AT&T was my account. So I would travel up and down the East Coast, and I had Verizon at one point too. And I feel like Verizon talked about out of home, and this was probably 10 years ago, maybe 11 or 12 years ago. But like I always thought out of home was very, very expensive. I also thought it was just billboards, to be honest with you, because I feel like there was not enough education. And I feel like there's still maybe not even enough education out there, because I bet if you surveyed 100 people or even 1,000 people, I wonder how many people would know everything that you can do with it.
Nick, to your point, you bring up something that honestly was part of our origin story, really, and the impetus for why we're doing this, which is, if you remember, and I go back to this because it had a huge impact on our career, but if you think about the origins of inbound marketing, right, and architecting that narrative, that is quite literally what we're doing here for out of home, because the majority of marketers don't really know anything about it. It's not your fault. The folks that are listening to this, watching this, we didn't know what OOH literally stood for before 2020. And that's what we're looking to do. It's educating folks on the different format types, how to use each format type to achieve reach, to achieve frequency, to even achieve down funnel optimization or conversions, I should say. How much things cost, how much you should invest in a particular market to achieve a certain objective. None of you would know this because you've never participated in this medium before, but it works. It's powerful, and I got to tell you, and obviously I'm a little biased, it's awesome. Seeing your ads in the real world is a feeling like you have never experienced. It's not like seeing your Facebook ads. It's not like seeing your LinkedIn ads.
It's like when you launch the new website.
Yes, launching a new website's awesome.
Months and months of labor going into that publish button.
It is, but this is, although it's an archaic medium, it does work, and we're just trying to help other folks understand how.
Well, it's funny. Sorry, can I just jump in real quick? I was going to say, it's funny that you mentioned that, because, and Greg, I sent you the picture because I was standing at the Syndoso office and like saw the truck go by twice and snapped a picture and sent it to you. I was like, oh, it's so cool. Like in far away, and partly the colors like caught me. Like it stood out from a sea of sameness of cars and trucks. And I mean, even there was like Lambos that were driving by, and I was like, still like, I don't know, I'm just attracted to bright things. But there's somewhere where I was going with that. And oh, I remember now. So I used to work for a company called PlanGrid. They were in the construction tech space, and we would go to job sites, and basically we sold job site to job site. We digitized blueprints, and we had to wait till the iPad came out for them to be able to digitize blueprints. But construction workers, like I was always thinking, so I ran like radio ads on 98.5, for example, in the morning at like 5 a.m. because people were driving to, Boston job sites. And it was actually very successful. And we did geofencing and some things, but like something like this, that would have been perfect for that industry.
That's exactly it. It's interesting because the other thing too is, well, first of all, it's identifying that audience, like who that audience is, right? And our data helps us to identify it down to the zip code level. We'll talk through it. We'll also you teaser in terms of the LED truck that we did. Definitely want to talk about that too. And love the fact that you saw it. That's part of the point, right? And the idea here is there is a bit of digital fatigue with folks as consumers, and we feel like there's this new transition back to the real world. And you guys, again, this is like really well aligned with how you guys feel too in terms of community, right? Building community is such a big focus for a lot of our B2B clients. Building trust, building authority, right? And having to influence or being able to influence multiple stakeholders within an organization, right? Decision by committee is sort of how things get done now. And if you can influence multiple stakeholders at an organization by building that trust and having that presence in the physical world, that's how you build that following. And people want to share experiences, right? There's something about that. I get served a meta ad and I'm alone watching it. I don't get to share in that experience. And we're now seeing with even the next generation coming up, they value the shared experiences even more. So out of home,
post-COVID, people value
absolutely
the shared experiences and the real world experiences even more.
It could be, and we're going to talk about Reprise. That was right after COVID, and that got their remote only team to go meet the people hadn't met each other in front of the NASDAQ sign in Times Square and took pictures and celebrated. That's what this does. Also, it also drove conversions, demo requests. We'll talk about that too.
Let's jump right into it because that's what's up next. Let's go.
Cool. So we work with companies of all shapes and sizes. We happen to work with a lot of B2B folks, and they come to us with various use cases for out of home. So one of the other things that people don't realize is how you can use out of home tactically, as Amber said very well, which is, well, you have a list of target accounts, pretty classic use case, and you want to target those accounts. You want to potentially break into and generate new logos or expand within existing accounts. Ramp is a really great example of this. It's one of our best customers. We've been doing out of home with them for quite a while, and they've grown with us, right? So although you see investment level here where it is, that's not necessarily where they started. But I wanted to start and share you this with this story here because it talks about how we can actually measure the efficacy of the campaign, and it shows the breadth of different formats that they leveraged, from wallscapes to billboards to bus shelters, both static and digital. They did it all, and they all meant something different for their funnel. We have targeted. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, sorry, I have a quick question on the investment level because I'm sure you've gotten it or you will get it. What was, since they're one of your best customers, obviously you've expanded and things like that. Do you what was their investment level when they started?
Conference campaign. So Miami Tech Week for probably under 50K. And that's where a lot of our B2B customers start is let's run a test. Let's do some sort of a conference amplification. I'm going to talk about that as well with one of the examples. Glad you asked the question. You don't need to spend this much. By the way, like our technologies also help to educate and tell you how much you should spend in a tier 1 city, in a tier 2 city, a tertiary or secondary market. And part of our job and part of how we built the platform is to identify those secondary markets where your budget can actually go further, right? So sure, everyone wants to target San Francisco and New York. Those are expensive. Those are competitive. And they're distracting, right? And what about some of the other types of DMAs? And we're going to show you in our product demo a place like where we went for B2B MX.
Greg, what does DMA mean?
DMA. So that is essentially describing a city. a greater city and a market, right? So if we're thinking about the greater Boston DMA, that includes essentially Boston, downtown Boston, all the way up kind of through New Hampshire. That is a DMA.